Hello, and welcome to our latest edition of Statehood Matters, the podcast of DC Vote. As Washington, D.C. residents continue to stay safe at home, so are we with this podcast. It's our home edition. I'm excited to be joined by a gentleman who's in his fifth term in the House of Representatives, having previously served as the mayor of Providence, Rhode Island. Please welcome to the program Representative David Cicilline. Congressman, welcome, and thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Of course, you've been a long-standing supporter of DC statehood, including a co-sponsorship of H.R. 51, the Washington, D.C. Admissions Act. Why does it matter to you? Why is statehood important as somebody who doesn't live in D.C. and isn't directly affected?
Well, I think it should matter to everyone who cares about democracy and representative government. I'm proud to be a co-sponsor of Congresswoman Eleanor Holmes Norton's legislation to give D.C. statehood. I was proud that her bill passed out of the Oversight Committee earlier this year. And the reason is DC residents bear all the responsibilities of citizenship. They are the highest or one of the highest federal taxpayers per capita of any state in the country. They've served in all of our nation's wars, but they don't have voting representation in the Congress of the United States. And they don't have a representation in our nation's capital. And in addition to that, they aren't protected from interference by the Congress of the United States in their local lawmaking functions. So this is about the right of people to be represented, to have a voice in Washington, to have a voice in their national government. And the cruel irony is that it's happening in our nation's capital. And so I think the residents of the District of Columbia deserve statehood, so they have full representation, all the rights and responsibilities of citizenship.
I really appreciate that. You also serve as the co-chair of the Equality Caucus. It's in the House. It's focused on equality for members of the LGBTQ community. How does statehood relate to some of those issues and impacting our community?
Well, I think, Jen, two easy examples are the domestic partnership law, which the Congress blocked when the District of Columbia attempted to do it for many years. They also prevented the needle exchange program during the height of the AIDS and HIV epidemic that caused countless deaths in the District of Columbia. And those are just two examples that really impacted our community. But it's another reason that local governments have to have the ability to enact laws that they think are appropriate to promote the health and safety of their own communities without interference from the Congress of the United States.
Maybe a more serious question. As you talk to constituents when you're in Rhode Island, do you run into any opposition to DC statehood because Rhode Island would lose your smallest state status?
No, I mean, Rhode Island will remain a mighty force despite our size, and of course, one of the original 13 colonies and the birthplace of the American Industrial Revolution, and the list goes on and on. So we're not worried about that.
You've got plenty of other things to hang hats on.
Exactly.
Got it. In all seriousness, no, we know that you and Representative Langevin, your co-congressman from Rhode Island, both support the bill. Both are co-sponsors. Neither Senator Reid nor Senator Whitehouse from Rhode Island are co-sponsors of the statehood bill in the Senate. And we haven't really sort of gotten any real good information as to whether or not they even support the bill. And I'm wondering if you had any insight or intelligence as to why that might be, or...
I don't have any insight as to why it would be. I not actually had a conversation with either of them about it. So
all right,
well, happy to, but I
you figure it's a smaller place. Maybe you had a chance to, but I appreciate that. Yeah. As the country is dealing slowly with starting to sort of reemerge from COVID-19, and we know that the residents of Washington, D.C. were shorted $775 million in the CARES Act that was passed back in March. The HEROES Act, which the House passed just 2 weeks ago, I think now, fixed this. On behalf of the 700,000 residents of D.C., of course, we thank you for that vote. How do we make sure that that stays, and how do we get that going? And is it really, is the reason D.C. really got shorted because of the fact that we have no voice in the United States Senate whatsoever?
Well, you know, the way you fix that and make sure it doesn't happen is you ensure that D.C. has statehood, because if the District of Columbia were a state, it would have been treated as a state in the initial legislation. But we fixed in the HEROES Act. D.C. was treated as a territory in funding, and that's outrageous. It's the nation's capital, and it's an area where there was a significant outbreak, and there was no rational reason that they should have been shorted funding the way they were. And you would like to think if they had voting representation, that would be less likely to happen. I think that's right. If they had statehood, that's less likely to happen. But the District of Columbia has a powerful and effective voice in Ellen Holmes Norton, but they don't have a vote. And I think that's just one example of the consequences of the lack of voting representation. It's easy for the district to be shortchanged and for the will of the people of the district to be overridden by the Congress of the United States. It's wrong, it's undemocratic, it's un-American, and it should not continue.
Congressman Cicilline, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for your work supporting DC statehood. Thank you for your work representing the LGBTQ community. We look forward to talking and working with you more.
Thanks for having me. Stay safe.
Have a great one. Thank you. You too.